This is the King of Connecticut here in downtown West Palm Beach on Clematis Street next to Myers Lounge. And we're going to be welcoming people here at Capone's Speakeasy to a night in the life.
The life was not all fun, well there was pain. But I always found sunshine in the rain. The life had everything, danger and thrills. To stay alive, you had to be the one who cares. Once in a life, there ain't no getting out. You obey the rules, no questions and no doubt. The brush, the booze, the dough can make you blind. Blood in your eye can wear your mind. I live a life.
You will hear stories from a man whose life is more invigorating and exciting than any Hollywood movie. I want to introduce to you people a man that has lived the life. My friend, give it up for Larry Mazza!
I want to thank you all for coming, ladies, gentlemen, guys and dolls, or mobsters and moles. What do you like best? The road getting here is really the unique story. And I guess I'll start at the beginning. So while I'm in college, with just about my first year, I had a lot of jobs too. I started out as a paper boy, like probably a lot of us, worked in grocery stores, different things. I was a busboy in a catering hall. So anyway, I'm working in the supermarket, and one of my jobs is to deliver groceries to people's homes. 9 times out of 10, who's in the house? The wife. See where this is going. So I had a few on the route that had little rendezvous with, but there was this one. I think she was very, very stunning looking. You'll see pictures of her in the book before and after. And while I'm delivering to her house, she's starting to come on to me more and more. She asked me, I'll never forget this, it's in the book. She asked me, so do you fool around? Now, I'm a kid, so I was a little insulted. I told her, I says, of course I fool around. What do you think, I'm gay? So as the affair goes on, about 6 months in, she starts telling me she wants me to meet her husband. He could do a lot for me. He's influential. He knows a lot of people. He was just a unique guy. His name was Greg Scarpa, later on known as the Grim Reaper. He was a heavyweight in the Columbo family. A dinosaur, goes all the way back to Joe Profaci days, and came up under him. All the bosses, Joe Yacht, and then eventually, obviously Junior Persico, who's going to be a big part of my story soon. I start researching a little bit. I start asking around a little bit, and I'm getting all these nicknames: Hannibal, Grim Reaper. I said, this can't be good. I got to see if I can get out of this. But she won't hear of it. She'll have no part of it. She says, no, he would never hurt you. He knows I love you. I said, what? He says, no, you're good. He knows you help me out at the store and this. So this goes on for another year. He had another wife 3 hours away in Lakewood, New Jersey. Then he had another wife in Manhattan and Vegas. So Linda was his third, but she was common law. Found out later on they really weren't married. So he was juggling 3 women. So at the end of the day, I think I was just making his life a little easier. He starts talking to me about business a little bit. How he's got to pick up a lot of money tomorrow. Will I drive him? Why does he need me to drive him? But he wanted to start bringing me in. He brings me to a meeting, Greg, at Sorrento's again. And he just partnered up in a supply company where they furnish fire extinguishers, cleaning products, small businesses. And it's funny because they would give me a list of places to go. I would go in, I'd walk in, and it was all set up. I would go in and say, oh, would you like to buy your supplies from us? And they all said yes. I thought I was a great salesman, but Greg had already let them know his guy was coming. And he says, now I want you to go into the other stores alongside. So I would stop in cold, and I'd come back later on to the club, which was the office, with fire extinguishers and invoices. And he'd say, how'd you do at that Mario's place? I says, nah, he wasn't interested. He wasn't interested. Carmine, come over here. Calls Carmine, he says, you go see this Mario, tell him my nephew's coming. Now I'm his nephew. My nephew's coming tomorrow. Make sure he puts an order in. I go back to Mario's the next day. It was like a prince walked in. They couldn't do enough for me. So I thought, man, I'm some salesman. But I was building up the business. Of course, the factory where all this stuff is being held, or the warehouse, goes up in flames. Okay, to this day, I don't know if it was an insurance job or what, but now I don't have this job anymore. I'm out of school. I have no job. This is when Linda convinces him, bring Larry in. Let him be, let him work for you. So he calls me to the house. I go to the house. The first thing he tells me is, I'm going to bring you into the numbers business. Anybody familiar with that business? So it's the lowest form of business crime you could possibly commit in this life. But I got good at it. So I would go pick up the numbers from different places. I started adding places on my own, like OTB. Remember the OTBs? Okay, so I would go in there, and I said, they're gamblers, so they're a captive audience. I would go in, and I'd get more numbers. So now the business started growing more and more. Next thing I did was, now I'm an OTB. What do you think I did? I started taking horse action. I said, why are you giving up 7% to OTB? If you win $10 with us, you'll get the full 10. I was writing more business than OTB by the end of a few months because we were paying them the right price. So we got so close at this point where I would be at his house with Linda. She'd be, in the kitchens having coffee, and we'd be waiting for him to come back from his house in New Jersey. He comes in. Soon as we walk out to the car, which we did every day together, I started taking him to the club. He starts telling me, Larry, I gotta have this conversation with you because you're not the same guy I met 6 months ago. There's something wrong with you. He said, I just don't like the way you've been acting. He said, I know how it could happen. I know how she is. I know how you are. I know about you too. And I looked at him and I says, Greg, I have a lot of respect for you, and you're far from an idiot. But only an idiot would see what was going on. He banged the desk, he started laughing, walked me outside with his arm around me, and I'll never forget, I had to walk past the closet. That later on, I knew when there was a conversation of serious nature in that back office, if the answers didn't come out right, there was somebody in that closet with a gun. He tells me he's okay with what's going on. But he says if anybody outside the three of us, me, him, and Linda, find out, he says, you and I will be killed. You may ask why him? Because he allowed it. That's a rule that is there for a reason. Imagine guys just messing around with everybody's wives and stuff like that. It's disrespectful. It leads to a lot of things. Weakness, jealousy, is that going to be problems? So anyway, needless to say, it's an important rule. And he was as guilty as I was. So now, with this in the open, he starts bringing me in even closer. He now teaches me the Shylock business. which is lending money at exorbitant rates. And being in the bookmaking business, it tied in together real well. Because if a guy lost 20,000 and didn't have it, I says, go see Greg. He'd give him the 20,000. He'd charge him 2 points, but I would get 1, and he'd get 1. Or whatever it was at the time, sometimes more, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. So now I'm involved in that, which starts leading to more serious stuff. Because when they don't pay, especially in that business, they're gonna get hurt. He asked me one day to give a guy a flat tire. So I says, all right. I figured maybe the guy parked in his driveway, you know, and he was mad at him, no big deal. So I go to the house, big white caddy, I give the guy a flat tire. The next day, the New York Post says, man killed fixing flat. I saw the tape there. I didn't go in and say, Greg, the guy gave him a flat and now he's dead. I just kept my mouth shut. You know, growing up in Brooklyn, our parents, my mother, my grandmother, everybody I know told me, mind your business. Don't say nothing. If you do, you know nothing. If the cops come, you know nothing. So I just kept quiet. So, again, time goes by. I'm sitting in the back of the club with him. And this guy walks in named Donnie. Don't know his last name. I know he was a numbers guy and some other business. But every day he came in and dropped off money and a little ticket with the numbers and the business. So this day we're all sitting in there. Well, not all of us, about 4 of us. And because there's probably 12 to 15 guys every day hanging out at the club. Donnie comes in, sits down. None of us know what's going on. Greg takes the numbers, he's looking at the numbers, counts the money in front of the guy, puts the money in the drawer. He looks at Donnie, he says, so Donnie, what is this I hear on the rack? You can see the blood come out of his face. He just was pale. And the guy says, oh, Greg, I really, you know, we were drunk, we're just talking, you know, I don't feel that way. So he says, do you have any paperwork on it to prove that statement? He says, no. He reaches in the drawer, pulls a gun out, shoots him right across the desk. That's the first one I saw that close. And in that life, if somebody calls you a rat, you could kill them. If they can't prove it, and you know, there's gonna be no repercussions for killing them. Now I'm firmly in, and I you know, again, I'm not gonna go through all the hits, I'm not gonna go through everything like that, but I drove a crash car, I was a backup shooter, then I was the main shooter, and this went on for years and years and years. And that part is hard for me to talk about, because all those people that met their demise for breaking a rule, it's sort of sad. It is sad in a way. It's sad because, like I said, they broke a rule and they were friends. They were people we knew. But there came a time, about 86, where the boss of our family, Junior Persico, a lot of you may know that name, Carmine Junior Persico, gets 130-something years in prison. And now he has to get somebody to act on his behalf. We need a leader, we need a street boss. He picks out a relative, I believe it was a cousin, named Vicarina. Vicarina had it for maybe a year when he started making a lot of moves that other people in the family, most of the Persicos, my boss Greg, a lot of people saw it was a Machiavelli tactic going on. So he goes around to the captains, he comes to Greg, or he sends for Greg. He sends a message that he'd like to see Greg. Jimmy asks him, where will you stand if Vic tries to take this thing for himself? So Greg tells him, I'm right there. He says, I just got out of the hospital. I'm real sick. He says, I'm not really going to get involved in this. Wherever the chips fall, I will align myself. As soon as Jimmy walked away, and I got in the car, driving Greg back, the first thing I said to Greg, I says, why didn't you declare yourself? Because I know him well enough now, and he told me a zillion times never to wave 2 flags. You wave 1 flag and that's it. So now here he was wavering. But he says, Larry, if I would have said, yes, I will back Vic, and Jimmy Angelina, who's Junior Purser goes, Counselor, yeah, goes back and tells Junior, he said, Junior's going to clip me. If I say no, he goes and tells Vicarina, Vicarina's going to clip him. Because he's trying to get the heavyweights out of the way so he can take this thing over. So now there's a few bodies here and there, things are happening, there's rumbling going on for a couple of years, and ultimately, and Greg told me, it took about 2 years, he kept telling me, war is inevitable. Jimmy Angelina gets whacked. Okay, we just said it's untouchable. But after he couldn't get it done, Vicarina sends a message to Junior that Jimmy Angelina is trying to take over the family. So they have him killed. Think about that. Vic is the one trying to take over the family. He sends a message that Jimmy's trying to take over the family. So now it's fine. Get him out of the way. You know, this is the treachery in the life that I learned firsthand and a lot more in the coming couple of years. They try to kill Greg. He comes out of his house. He's got his baby grandson in his arms. And his daughter comes out. They get down. She gets in one car. He gets in the front Lincoln with a bunch of guys. I was already in the pool room waiting for him, my pool room. And as they pull down the block, they get surrounded by a truck and a van, and a shootout ensues. Nobody gets hit. They get away, but now, obviously, the war was on. We run into this guy, Joe Waves. As soon as we see him, we pull our guns out, we start shooting at him, he starts shooting back. This went on almost every day for months, sandwiched in with meetings. It got frustrating. It was very surreal. It was almost like a nightmare every day. And this Greg would not let us take a day off. I want to go play racquetball. You know, I want to go work out. I want to go do something other than drive around with a gun and a bulletproof vest. He won't stand for it. He says, no, we're going to win this war. A little more time goes by. And now there's a truce for New Year's. And John Gotti sends a message that he'd like this shooting to stop because his case is starting. Greg says, F him, let him mind his business. This is our family, we'll do what we got to do. You know, I could say, I regret, I'm sorry, this and that, but I can't say that because I was in the life and I acted the way I had to act, being in the life at that time. Kill or be killed. So with that, guys are now fleeing to even Florida. Okay? I gotta say, guys, we had a presence down here. One of the heavyweights on the other side, a guy named Vinny Alloy, is hiding out down here at some golf club. Comes to the table, and we said, we gotta send some guys down to take out this Vinny Alloy. This is how far me and Jimmy came now. Okay, we're sitting there, and we've been in Brooklyn for 6 months getting shot at, shooting people. So as soon as they said we need a few guys, me and Jimmy put our hands up. We want to go to Florida. So I could go on with some more hits and things like that. But what happens, the feds had enough. The Brooklyn DA had enough. So they start pinching guys left and right, just arresting them in the streets, whatever happens. So now, we're coming to an end because the heat is on. The family, Greg insists on us putting together an administration. We have to let the other families know that we are the Borgata. So we called for this big meeting. At this meeting, Greg nominates a friend of ours, Joe T, to be our boss. Who seconds, thirds? Everybody takes him unanimously. He's the boss. Greg also suggested that Jojo Russo, who's Andrew Russo's son, be named underboss. That was to keep the person happy, satisfied that a family member's at the top. They also make my boss, Greg Scarpa, for the first time an official captain. After that meeting, Jimmy and I were taken into a restaurant that was closed, and we were officially brought into the family. It wasn't a real typical ceremony that you've seen in movies and you hear about, but unfortunately, the way the life was at the time, and Greg having AIDS, we couldn't even cut off fingers. So there were things we couldn't do. But I understood what was happening. I was I was told the rules officially, which I'll say, every rule that was being said to me, I was cringing. The first one about the boss is a boss is a boss. Nobody goes against the boss. If your mother's on her deathbed and you're called, you come. And I said yes. But I knew Vicarina tried to kill the boss, or we killed the boss. John Gotti killed the boss. The other one is drugs. No dabbling in drugs. No trafficking narcotics. A lot of guys at that table that was sitting there, I know, especially my own boss, Greg, got into that business very, very big. I stayed out of it. That was rule number 2. Omerta, we all know about. You're not supposed to talk. Counterfeiting. Counterfeiting's a rule that nobody knows. Nobody ever talks about that rule. But we're not supposed to use counterfeit money. And that one I understood. I was making so much money, I didn't want to get any counterfeit money in the streets. So I got that. Which one am I leaving out? There's a rule I'm leaving out. The sleeping with the wife. Now, when they told me that one, I couldn't make eye contact with Greg. So after that, I was officially, although I was with Greg all these years, now I was officially under him. He was my capo regime. He was the cap. And they did that because when you get made, you're put under some captain somewhere. And Greg was not going to lose me and Jimmy. We were the only 2 guys he trusted, especially during this war. So he got the stripes for the first time. And unfortunately, within 6 months, we were all pinched. Facing life, multiple lives. Carmine Sessa, the consigliere who's on the land, calls a meeting, and about 8 of our heavyweights go to this meeting at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. They didn't make it up the steps. The FBI was all around them. All of them got pinched. I go down to Florida. I had a place in Cocoa Beach, still do. And while I'm down there, I'm in contact with some of the guys. Jimmy's going to come down, and from there, we're going to go on the land. We're going to take off because we know our days are numbered. But before that happens, the FBI surrounds my car on Merritt Island, a block from where I live now, and I get pinched. So I'm arrested. Now I'm in the system. Jimmy calls up on his way down, and he's told, turn around, don't even come here. You don't want to be here. So I'm in prison. I'm fighting the case. Guys now, left and right, are starting to make deals. Everywhere around, everywhere you turn, somebody else. They said the Columbo family clogged up the system. That's how embarrassing it got. So many guys were making deals. Carmine's the first to go, and he was our consigliere. So he knew everything that went on. That was bad. The first 5 or 6 guys that copped out, they allocated or admitted to things that only hurt us worse. When our time would come, we can't say, well, there is no family war, there was no war. They already admitted it. So our judge heard all this, and he even recused himself because he said he felt like an honorary member of the Columbo family, and you can't get a fair trial with me. So he took himself off. And the government is very, very, I don't want to say clever, devious. All the time I'm in, now I'm in for almost a year. Again, I'm cutting through a lot of red tape. And there's separations everywhere. I can't be with my best friend Jimmy. Well, he wasn't in yet. I can't be with half of the family. They got me separated everywhere. All of a sudden, they put me on a floor with Greg, my boss. And that's like, I was shocked. We wind up in the same cell. They move me off the floor. They bring me up to 11 South. There, I'm with Vic Arena. I'm saying, why are they putting me here? They kept me away from all the Wild Bill's crew. They kept me away from all these guys, and this was our number one target. And in jail, it's not, people could still get hurt in jail. So, he comes to me on the floor, and he comes with two other heavyweights from another family. He calls me into the bathroom. That's where you have meetings in prison, because it's somewhat private. Vic starts telling me he's hearing rumors about Greg Scarpa being a rat. My boss, the Grim Reaper, told me he stopped counting at 50 bodies, and he's a rat. So I go after Vic, because I got to protect my guy. I can't believe you're calling him a rat. And the guy's getting middle, no, we don't know for sure, but we're hearing things. So I said, well, I picked up my mattress, I went to the other side. The very next day, comes out in the newspaper, Greg Scarpa, my boss, the Grim Reaper, is a government informant for 30 years.
What?
The guy that brought me into this life. And the funny thing is, because of Greg and Carmine and so many others, I had nothing to give them. They knew everything, so there was nothing for me to do. But I had this. I had the knowledge of the corrupt FBI agent that was partners with my boss. That gave us that frequency, that gave us addresses of our enemies to go kill. And one of the addresses, picture this, there's a low-level FBI agent who's out in the street. He comes up with an address where Vic Arena is hiding out. Greg Scarpa, my boss, gets that same address. We go to the spot, it's an empty lot, it's the wrong address. Now, if it was a right address, say, all right, well, they both got the good information. But how does Greg wind up with the same exact wrong address? Because the agent gave it to him, and an agent testified about that. So I had other things. I had the shoe phone I mentioned before was somebody in my family's, and every time he would make a call and talk to his girlfriend, it was documented, because back then you had an itemized account of every phone number. So I still have that. They have copies, and they never exposed it. It never came out, and I gave it to the defense too, because they had the right to know that later on. And I still went back, offering it to them, and for some reason it never turns up. But anyway, I got 10 years. And they kept me in longer, I think, because they didn't want this agent to go to trial. And I was one of the star witnesses on that trial against him. And so in some ways, it saved my life, But that's it. That was the typical ending. Jail, dead, or in the witness protection program somewhere, which I was never going to go into because I don't trust them. I figured they'd kill me.
When I was lean and mean, naive and green, the boss's wife seduced me and we made love. Night and day we fit just like a glove. The life was not all fun, but there was pain. But I always found sunshine in the rain. The life had everything, danger and thrills. To stay alive, you had to be the one who cares. Once said alive, there ain't no getting out. You obey the rules, no questions and no doubt. The brush, the booze, the dope can make you blind.